Okay, so I'm going to introduce you, Cole, to what we're doing today. So we're both really new at this, but as mentioned to the camera earlier, I brought Cole on today on a Zoom chat because Cole is somebody who is close to me, who I look to for advice all the time. And I brought him on a Zoom chat so maybe you guys can learn from him as well. Cole has had great success as an entrepreneur. He's scaled a company from zero to, he'll probably tell you how much, to in the millions. So Cole is somebody I always go to for advice. And he also has helped me raise tens of thousands of dollars for my company and pointing me in the right direction to raise more funds. So Cole, welcome, bro. I'm pretty excited to have you here, man.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Nick. No, I'm really excited. Haven't really done anything like this in a long time, and yeah, dude, I appreciate you. I appreciate your advice as well. I think it's a two-way street. So yeah, I'm excited to dive in and have a good chat.
Excited. So I have one question for you to start. Do you have to come from a wealthy family to become a successful entrepreneur?
Definitely not. I mean, look at it any way you want. Look at there's people like Bill Gates who came from relative wealth, or but then on the other side of things, you got Damon John who came from like nothing. Fubu's what, multi-hundred-million-dollar company now. Like, I mean, my parents were both pretty middle class. My dad was like an electronics technician, worked for Bell, worked for the phone company. Pretty like normal job. My mom does sales for a nonprofit. Like, nothing, I didn't come from any kind of wealth, no second home in Florida, nothing like that. I'm very thankful for the opportunities I was given. I didn't come from abject poverty, but no, I think anybody, it's honestly, and I've been talking to friends about this a lot. It's like, if all you need is drive. You just need that spark of motivation. And as long as you don't give that up, you can accomplish whatever the hell you want.
Before we touch on a few other things, let's just touch on what you've accomplished.
So Site 2020, we, you take a flagger, the guy with the stop sign on a road construction site. He's the stop, the slow sign, and he, moves traffic through the site. So stepping back a bit, so I was an engineering student. I was doing electrical engineering at Dalhousie. I didn't really have a good reason for being in engineering. I really like electronics. I really like, understanding how things work, but I'm more of a people person. I'd rather talk to people than computers. So I was in engineering. I only chose it because it was like the hardest thing I knew to do, but I wasn't really getting like the inspiration out of it. Started businesses, I started at, age 13. I had my own lawn mowing business, 13-year-old making like 30, $40 an hour is pretty sweet. Right. So,
Wow.
That kind of made me realize, like, I'm never going to be the kind of guy who works for someone else for some like lower, I was very lucky to get that exposure early on where I said, I'm never going to work for like a lower value. So I'm here in engineering. I'm like, okay, I'm learning all this really cool technical stuff, but I'm not getting the business side of things. I'm not getting that stuff that really inspires me, whether it's like making money or making an impact, or I still haven't quite figured that, the deep motivation of it out yet. But all I know is I am motivated to making, big impact. So left engineering. I said, okay, hey, I'm going to take a semester off. I'm just going to pursue business. I really don't know where it's going to go. I found this one cool sounding business course called Starting Lean, where the whole gist of it was you've got, 30 or so people in the class, the two of us included. Everybody pitches an idea on the first day, and then you whittle it down to the top, like 8 or 9 ideas. You group those 30 people into groups of 3 around those ideas, and you basically go out every week of the class. You go out and iterate, you talk to people, you get feedback. Is it a good idea? Does it suck? How do you change it? And yeah, over the whole course of the class, where I got together with 2 guys named Mitch and Harris, Harris and I had, I think, the idea of like starting a, some kind of like smart shopping cart. And Mitch comes over to us and says, hey, why don't we work on this flaggers idea? I think it's got the potential to go somewhere. And so we started working on it. We started asking, talk to police and fire and construction companies, and talking to all these clients, potential clients. And we ended up getting a meeting with the largest construction company in Atlantic, Canada, like a multi-billion-dollar company. And we walk into the room and they're like, yeah, we like it. And the guy we met with was like, let me introduce you to the next guy up the chain. And he's like, yeah, I like it. And he's like, let me hold a meeting with, with some of the higher ups. And we were like, all right, cool. You know, we're a couple like 20 something year old dudes, got a cool PowerPoint, nothing else besides that, a cool idea. And we walk into this room and it's like I think like, I forget at this point, but it was like the CFO of the company, like the VP of operations, like 8 or 9 top brass of this like staggeringly massive construction company. And we're here like, holy shit, like we got a PowerPoint, like we got literally a picture of a traffic light on a stick, and we got nothing else.
Yeah.
And these guys at the end of the meeting, they were essentially like, all right, well, sounds cool. Like, what do you guys need? Like, you want money? You want support?
Wow.
And yeah, so anyway, long story short, we come out of the class, you know, it's 4 months. And then 4.5 years later, you know, the business is worth, at the time I left the business, you know, it was worth, I think, $11 million. We were doing 300K a month, you know, all across North America. So yeah, that was kind of the genesis.
Oh man. And you have no idea how much that inspired me coming out of that class as well. I was sitting in that class thinking like, man, I'm watching the same people I worked with go scale a company from literally zero. I've seen you with, you know, zero, an idea and a PowerPoint, you know, pitching this product to, you know, 4 years later, I'm watching you move into buildings and work crazy hours. And I was just like, yo, this is inspiring. If this guy is taking a company from 0 to 10 million, if I stick close, maybe I can do the same. And that was definitely an inspiration. Yeah, you definitely inspired a lot of people, man. And it's like when you were asking, you know, you just said, I was going, you know, somehow you got to this point where you got to like the CEOs and stuff. How many doors did you have to knock on? Or is it like 5? And you're like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and you kind of got lucky? Or are you like grinding the entire time to get to that CEO and get to those influential people?
It wasn't so much how many doors you knock on. It's, you got to think, who are you going to solve the problem for? Because like we knocked on all these doors, you know, we talked to like the fire department and like EMS, like ambulance service. We talked to like the police, you know, like the Department of Transport and like construction companies. And like we had, you know, all these different categories. And it was, you know, a bunch of the doors, you know, everybody would give us a meeting and they'd sit down and say, hey, it's a great idea. But there were only certain people who are like, it really, you got to follow the money. You got to follow who's saying, hey, this is a huge problem. Hey, you know, this is frustrating. And sometimes people don't even realize that, you know, maybe your pitch is bad, but once you focus on who you're actually solving the real problem for,
wow, then,
you know, doors kind of just open. I won't say automatically, because you obviously work hard, but it's all about being respectful of people's time and making sure you actually have value to add, and then the doors kind of open themselves.
So is it fair to say when you're looking for so you're trying to solve the problem for someone, you don't know who. So was it valuable to go get that no from like, you know, the firefighters and stuff like that? So did those no's lead to a yes? Or is it just like you guys were scrambling, or was it more like, oh wow, it's pointing in one direction?
100%. I'd say the no is more valuable than the yes, because the thing is, the yes, you know, there's one yes out there for every 1,000 no's. So, you know, a really common thing people will do is they'll build and it's less common now, thankfully, but they'll build a product and they'll be like, hey, I've got this great idea for this problem. Maybe I've got the problem myself. Maybe I perceive that someone has it or a friend of mine has it, and they'll go out and they'll build this solution. And, you know, fully fledged solution, they might spend, you know, they'll spend too much time on it. And then they'll come out and they'll say, hey, I've got this solution, and nobody wants to buy it.
Yeah.
And they get discouraged because they're like, shit, I just spent all this time on this thing. What's going on? Whereas if you start knocking on those doors early on, you know, what you might have had in your head as the solution, you know, you'll start to refine that. You'll say, hey, I wanted to build this whole thing, but maybe we only need to start with this one feature, or maybe it's actually this completely other thing that still, you know, still is like a solution. It still scratches the itch, but it's totally different from what we initially thought it was going to be. So the no is really, really important.
Wow, that's awesome, man. I love that. Let's segue to our second question. And I know you touched on you starting your own lawn care company at age 13. So that kind of segues into our second question. What age did you decide to start working for yourself? Like,
so I never really decided, honestly. It was just kind of how it happened. Like, I was like 13, that would have been like 2006, I guess. I didn't know what I wanted to buy. I probably wanted to buy like a PlayStation Portable, like a PSP or something. And I was like, shit, I have no money. I'm too young to get a job. You know, I don't want my parents to buy it for me. What am I going to do?
Yeah.
And I was like mowing the lawn, obviously, for like my parents, and you know, it's easy. And I was like, well, why don't I just do it for the neighbors? And so I just printed out some posters on the computer, went and nailed them up at the different, you know, the different mailboxes, different bulletin boards around the community. And I got a couple calls, and pretty soon I was just mowing, you know, a couple lawns per week. Um, and you know, making, like I said, like making like 30-40 bucks an hour as a 13-year-old. You know, like obviously I had my dad help me drive around the lawnmower in the truck. I wasn't dragging it 5K down the
Yeah.
road.
Yeah.
But you know, it was a good stepping stone. And what was really important is it set my sights high, because then when I was, you know, 16, 17, 18, and I was looking to get a real job, I wasn't willing to settle for 10 bucks an hour or whatever minimum wage was back then. So it was really important, a really important lesson in setting your sights high, because if you tolerate something of a lower level, that's all you're going to get. You know, the universe isn't going to give you the cream of the crop if you're willing to tolerate the bottom of the barrel.
Yeah. Wow. That's dope. I didn't know that, man. I didn't know that about you. That's why I freaking love that people do these things, because that is amazing. Because you learn pretty young that you're like, wait, I can make 30 bucks an hour. Why would I work at McDonald's? And I'm pretty sure when you're 13, minimum wage was like $8. So 30 bucks an hour, man, that's like, you know, I mean, that's a lot of loot for a 13-year-old. All right, that's going to go to my next question. So for you, you kind of touched on it. Was there ever like an aha moment where like, I'm always going to take this route where I'm doing, you know, I'm creating my own wealth, either cutting lawns, or I'm creating my own wealth, either scaling businesses to millions of dollars? Was there ever an aha moment like, this is for me, being, you know, an entrepreneur is for me? Was there like that click, or was it over time?
I think I always knew, like, you know, I've always been, I won't say I've been surrounded by entrepreneurship, but like my mom's always, you know, been a pretty independent worker. She's more of like a freelancer, I'd say, than, you know, she has her own business, but she essentially subcontracts out. But you know, I've always had family members, actually, no, let me retract that. I don't really know, man. Honestly, I've just always had that feeling that I kind of like march to the beat of my own drum.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't want to sound like I've always felt that, or like I've always felt it, but I've never really understood that. You know, I fucked up a lot on my pursuit of realizing what I wanted to do. Like, you know, I've you know, like when I was like 17, 18, like I worked at you know, I joined the Army Reserves, and you know, I didn't really get too far. I injured myself, but I learned very quickly that I don't like to take orders. I worked at a gym with my girlfriend for minimum wage, and that was fun, until it wasn't. And like the management bullshit, and you know, just essentially realized that like arbitrary rules don't really do it for me. So it wasn't really one aha moment. It was just kind of like, you know, you know, realizing what does and doesn't work for me. And it turns out that, you know, unless I'm in control, like I've got a lot of good traits, sure, but I've also got a lot of traits that aren't really typical. Like I'm a pretty fucking weird dude. You know, I find it almost impossible to maintain consistency. You know, I'm all over the place with what I focus on. I've always got like 5 things going at once, but like I'll take something and I'll run with it for like 2 weeks, and then I'll just kind of drop it, and then like take something else for 2 weeks, and I'm back to that first thing or the third thing. So like, you know, I kind of have to manage my own time and energy, because I'm not like your predictable 9 to 5 guy who's going to come in and work 8 hours and work 8 hours and work 8 hours. It's like, you know, it's like sprint and recover, sprint and recover. So, it wasn't so much a choice as it was just like, well, you know, I'm going to blow my head off if I get an office job. So how the hell else can I succeed?
So it wasn't a choice. It was literally like, this is where I feel comfortable. And it was like, almost like, this is where I feel comfortable. This is where I gotta be. It wasn't like, hey, I should work for myself. It was more like, this is where I fit, and this is where I want to be.
Yeah. And there's a really good book I read 4 or 5 years ago. It's called The Way of the Superior Man by David Data. And it's not just for men, you know, I think women, I think it's a really good book for anyone, but it essentially says, you know, just one thing that I really took out of it was just dive into exactly what you're most passionate about. And sure, maybe you've got to work a job, maybe you don't have the funds to follow a business or becoming an Olympic athlete, or, you know, even just fucking relaxing on the beach every day, whatever your goal, your mission is, just dive into it as hard as possible until you just don't care, and then dive into the next thing. You know, just follow your exact passion. And, you know, it's a skill, you know, it's a muscle you got to flex, but having that kind of framework in place, you know, that's my kind of overall goal, is just dive into what exactly makes me passionate and do the best I can with it. And then when it's done, move on and be happy it happened.
Wow. That's awesome. Yeah. So that kind of segues into my next question, is you kind of touched on it, but what is the number one skill you think entrepreneurs should have going into creating your business? You talked having that laser focus. You talked about, you know, having that ambition, that drive, getting to the no's before you get to the yes. But what is that number one skill that entrepreneurs should have going into creating their own business?
That's a really tough question that I've been trying to answer myself. I think we all are. Probably, I mean, drive is really important, but I don't know if that's something you can learn. I think it's more recognizing what inspires you. Maybe you're not meant to be an entrepreneur. You know, it's kind of a cool, trendy thing right now. You don't need to be an entrepreneur. Maybe, you know, like I said, maybe you're destined to be an athlete or a hairdresser, or you know, just maybe you really just want to read books on the beach and become a philosopher, become nothing. You know, nobody can tell you what you need to do besides yourself. But as far as being an entrepreneur specifically, I would say openness. I would say being able to being able to be wrong, for starters. Being able to say, hey, I've got this crazy idea. You know, I've got nothing but the idea. Maybe I can articulate it well. Maybe you get it. Maybe I can't articulate it well at all, but I've just got this feeling. And being able to just be wrong about it, either, you know, pursue it, you know, a week, 2 weeks, 6 weeks down the road, or, you know, 6 years down the road, and be able to say, hey, this is terrible. Or who knows, maybe after that, you know, that year, that 2 years, that 3 years, you've got traction, you've got $1 million idea, $1 billion idea. It's really just being able to be wrong. And when you are wrong, being able to absorb that and not take it personally, not be like, wow, I was wrong, fuck me, right? Like, everybody hates me. And be like, okay, well, I take responsibility. You know, I've still got a mission. I've still got some positive energy, some love to put out there. I was clearly doing that wrong. How can I adjust my tactic to fulfill my mission, but not be wrong? So
so you gotta, what you're saying is like, you gotta go, it's like throwing darts at the dartboard kind of thing. If it doesn't stick, you can't get really hurt about it. You gotta go to the next and see what sticks and be really open-minded. So I love that, man. So this is going to get into a little tougher questions, because we talked about you. We kind of veered off of, you know, you taking an idea and turning it into multi-millions, hiring people, creating jobs, scaling it across, you know, North America. But during that journey of those 4 years of building this business from zero to $10 million, what are the 5 dumbest mistakes? You give me 3, give me 4, give me 5. What are the dumbest mistakes you made along the way?
Yeah, so great question. So one thing I gotta say is I can't take anywhere near like the credit goes to the team. Like I had something to bring to the team, but I also had a lot of areas where I was weak. So, you know, and that's the same with any team. That was one of the biggest takeaways from starting Site 2020 was, you know, as far as hiring people, I really didn't know the first thing about how to hire and manage people. You know, that's something I'm learning even now, but definitely not my strong point. You know, I'm very good at making systems, you know, like taking a whole bunch of data and synthesizing together into a system. But as far as actually managing the people, now that's definitely something I looked to my other, you know, team members, fantastic team members, to take more of a lead on that. You know, we had the prototype, and then we had the prototypes built, and we raised some money, and that was a big win. And then we took the money and we said, okay, we're going to hire an engineering consultant to build this thing for us. Because, you know, our strength is in the sales side of things, in the product, you know, the concept development, the development of like the organization and the brand and the customer development, but we're not really engineers, you know. So we're going to hire some mechanical engineers, going to hire some electrical engineers to build this for us. And um, I would say that's almost there's companies that make it happen really well, but for a 19 and a 22-year-old kid, um, we essentially hired the wrong people. Like we paid them, I think it was 90 grand at the end, and they did some good work, but at the end of the day, we wasted a lot of that money. We got really good value out of it, but we could have saved a massive amount of money, whether we had hired someone in-house or hired a different consultant. They just didn't really deliver to what they said they could deliver and what we thought they could deliver.
Yeah.
So
So
I was
I want to touch on that before we go past that, because, that's something I struggle with as well. And I think a lot of entrepreneurs struggle with is, how do you vet someone to how do you know if that person's good enough to hire them? Like, yeah, you guys were young and you didn't know, and maybe this person came and they're a great salesperson, and you paid $90,000 for that person, but how do you know that that person will take you to the next level? How do you vet that? Have you learned how to vet that, or is it just trial and error?
honestly, man, if you don't know anything, find someone who does. Like, simple answer. We brought gray hair into the company. People who knew how to build sales teams, how to engineer stuff. Like, in the end, we got all those things right, but it took. Sometimes you just have to make the mistake, but generally, and this comes back to what you touched on at the very start of this video about, you are the people you surround yourself with. I've kind of like a board of directors for my life. I've got smart people like yourself and other friends that are really good at certain things they do, or a lot of things they do, and I bounce things off of them. But even more than my close group of friends who are amazing, I've got all these other people around me that I can call up and be like, hey, you're really good at I don't know, marketing. How do you think I should solve this specific problem? Or you're an engineer, you're a product development guy. I want to do this. What do you think of this? And just finding someone who's credible at what they're talking about, who's done it before, who can say, yeah, it's great, or no, it's a terrible idea. Or so if we had had either better advice, or maybe if we had, yeah, I don't know, man. It's hard to go back and say, but definitely if you're making a decision you're not competent in, it's definitely always better to have an understanding of what you're doing. And I think at that point we didn't have the best understanding of what the engineering process looked like.
Yeah.
But also, I don't know if we had the best advisors on how to make the most of the situation we were in. So that's what I would say.
That is that's a tough one to get around. It's really like what we said. It falls into, when you have the opportunity, but if you haven't built what it sounds like what you just told me, if you haven't built the Rolodex or the connections, and when you get to that platform where you're like, hey, I've come up with something really amazing. If you haven't built that Rolodex, like someone who else is out there trying to be an entrepreneur, if they haven't built that, relationship with a bunch of people, it's like, damn, that's why it's so important. Because when you're in that position, like you had people you could call on for expertise. Yes, this guy kind of screwed you over, but you learned, like, you know what, I'm going to ask people around me, which is super, super dope. The next question I'm going to go into: when you're in the midst of this and you're building your, business and empire, how many hours a week did you dedicate to your craft? And is energy management, I know something you actually touched on, energy management. So it's a two-part question. How many hours did you dedicate to your craft, say in a week or a month, when you're in the midst of it? And is the energy management something you work on, or something you look at, or is it nothing? So it's a two-part question. Start with the first one.
Honestly, man, yeah, no, that's a really good question. That's one that I think about above probably everything is energy management, because as an entrepreneur or like a high performer in whatever you want to do, you're only the sum of the energy you can put out and how well you can put it out, how well you can focus it on the right things. So it's a learning process, a constant learning process. Time put in, probably, on average, anywhere from 50 to 60 hours a week. Some weeks, sometimes, when it was just an idea in a classroom, it was less. And then, we built up the time as we got more and more invested in the idea to the point where we were working full time and probably, longer days. But at the same time, and then eventually, when we started selling these massive, 200-pound traffic lights to construction companies across North America, this new thing in this extremely outdated industry where there's essentially zero technology. You get a guy with a stick, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you're trying to say, hey, here's this massive, heavy, complicated robot thing. And you're trying to, there's a huge amount of effort there in trying to, simplify things, train people how to use it, get approval from state agencies. So we went from, pretty good hours to I was driving 8 hours. I'd work with a client for 8 hours, drive another, I was working 16 hours a day. I remember one time driving from, I think it was probably Virginia to Dallas. And I was in Arkansas, it's 3 a.m. I'm just every gas station, I'm getting 180 kilometers to the tank because I'm towing this massive trailer full of stuff, doing push-ups and squats at every gas station. I'd get out and I'd bust out 20 push-ups just to keep the blood flowing. Got a gallon of coffee here. So hours wise, but then that also burnt me the hell out. I remember I went to Osheaga, a big music festival in Montreal one weekend that summer. And I think I landed and my friends were yo, let's go do stuff. And I think I slept for 12 hours. And then oh man, it was awesome. But it was I was so burnt out, man. I think I slept in my own bed 11 times that summer, in a 9-month period.
Wow.
And energy management's key. That's actually one of the reasons that I did leave Site 2020 is because really fulfilling, really rewarding, learned a lot of really good things from a lot of really good people who are good at what they do, I should say.
Mm-hmm.
At the end of the day though, for me personally, and this was a big lesson, is kind of I touched on earlier, is I'm not the guy who can do that 8 hours, 10 hours, 10 hours, 12 hours, 12 hours. It's not sustainable for me. I can do it because I need to, but I don't do it because I like to. I don't endeavor to get up and work 12 hours. If that inspiration strikes, I want to do that 12 hours, that 15 hours a day, as long as it's necessary. Mm-hmm. But that's not the goal. So I spent the last 6 months or so, or 9 months now, I guess, almost a year, figuring out what I want for a work-life balance. And I've realized, hey, if I can get really good at internet marketing and, lead gen, or, some people do drop shipping, that's not my thing, but there's so many ways that you can make money asymmetrically where you can put in those long hours and build a system.
Yeah.
Think of it like a car engine. You build the engine and you put it together and you flick the switch. And as long as you keep putting gas in the engine and you keep, adjusting the spark plugs and the timings and all that, little things, that engine is just going to keep ticking, keep churning out horsepower. So that's kind of where I'm at right now, is where I'm such a spaz about time management. If I can build something and then have it work for me and be able to, manage my own energy. I work out probably an hour and a half, 2 hours a day. I spend a lot of time working, but I also spend a lot of time doing nothing, thinking. So learning to manage your own energy and your own rhythm is really important.
That's awesome, man. I love what you said. Sometimes people get it twisted that entrepreneurs just work relentlessly 20 hours, as many hours as they can. But what you're actually trying to build is just an engine so that you can step off of it and let that baby fly. All you got to do is put some gas in it. It's been built. It's almost building a house. You put all that energy and then after you can live in it. I freaking love that answer, man. So that and it goes to show too how many hours it took you to put into your craft to get to that, that success. So when you're in the midst of it, had the energy and you put it in. You were talking about 16-hour days and stuff like that, but you had the energy at the time, and that's how much hours it took to dedicate to your craft and your team and you. And that's how really you guys were building that house or that engine, right? And you built a big engine because of the dedicated time you put in. That's 16 hours to building that engine. That's 16 hours from a whole team. But eventually that's how you get to 10 million. In my perspective, watching you do it, that energy is there. It's almost locked in that engine of what you're describing. So that's really freaking cool, man.
And that's the thing too, is if you want to build $1 billion company, people think, oh, it's cool, Facebook, Uber, Airbnb, man, that takes a lot of work. Like those guys, if you read about the Airbnb guys, like they sold cereal, they sold Obama O's, like some like political, like funny cereal, and, you know, raised like 40, 50 grand to start their company. And man, they ate cereal for like the next 6 months, and just like their whole company started because they lived in San Fran, rent was too expensive. So they literally put an air mattress, an air bed and breakfast
Yeah.
in their like living room. So like, it's not, you know, you do have to put in the hours, and the bigger the thing you want to build, the bigger the engine, the more you got to put in up front. One thing to touch on too is like a lot of these epiphanies that I'm talking about, those are all due to people. Like, I mean, like, for example, the engine analogy. I remember one of my new friends at the time, one of my best friends now, Dennis. I come into his office and he's building like a training software for athletes, and he shows me his like whole business on paper, and it's like this, he's got a funnel here and he's got all these loops and these diagrams, and I'm like, Dennis, what the hell is this? And he's like, man, this is the system, this is the machine. Like I'm just going to figure out all the inputs, I'm going to figure out how to, you know, massage all those inputs to get the right, you know, like whether it's through emails or calls or what software, whatever the hell you need, and it's going to spit out happy clients and money on the other end. And you know, that was an epiphany. And then my another one of my best friends, Avery, was like, you know, Avery is the epitome of marching to the beat of his own drum. So I, you know, I lived with Avery for two and a half years now.
Amazing, dude.
Until recently. And he was the guy who taught me, you know, march to the beat of your own drum, and you'll, you know, you'll feel happier. Like you can have fun and do entrepreneurship or do whatever high performance thing you want. If you're not having fun, it's not worth it. So that was, you know, it's the people around you. It really is.
Yeah, for sure. No, I love that answer, man. Like, honestly. And Avery is somebody I do want to have on here because he's awesome, man. Love that dude. So let's get into some things. Like, we're talking about managing energy and stuff like that. Are there any time wasters that you try to avoid? Anything that, you know, grabs your attention, you're like, damn, how can I avoid this, or how can I manage it? Any top time wasters that get you?
Oh man, that's too funny. You probably just caught me looking at my phone right there. And that's number one. You got to think it's you're just some random dude, some random girl, and on the other end of that phone, there's 40 or 50,000 software engineers and psychologists all competing for your attention.
Yeah.
And it's you against them, and you're probably, you know, you got to be real disciplined or you're not going to win. So that's a big one, you know, especially like Instagram. Is a huge one for me. I actually took this one from you, this inspiration, that I delete it pretty much all the time now. Insta's a big one. Facebook. Frig, what else? Just like, I don't know, like I catch myself, it's not so much a specific thing, but I find it's realizing when you're most fulfilled and most happy. And productivity goes in there. But like, for example, for myself, I'll find as the evening goes on, you know, the earlier I wake up, the more I get done and the happier I am. And it sucks. You know, I have to like beat myself up to get out of bed,
Nice.
like in the moment. But then as soon as I push through it and it's a half hour later, I've had 12 cups of coffee, you know, I'm like happy. And then by the end of the day, I'm like, shit, I'm really fulfilled.
Yeah.
Whereas if I let myself sleep in, you know, I wake up, I'm like, the day is wasted.
Yeah.
And then in the evening, I'm up super late because I've, you know, I slept in till 10 or whatever.
Yeah.
And I find myself just doing useless stuff. So it's like, it's about knowing how your own rhythm works and saying, hey, okay, it's after 8 p.m. and I'm watching Netflix, and sure, I might be, you know, happy drooling on the couch right now, but this is, you know, this is net negative to my happiness. So it, you know, it's about specific things to avoid, but it's also, you know, knowing when to call it quits.
Yeah. Interesting.
Another one's, yeah, there's all kinds of addictive apps out there. Everybody's got their own poison. I'd say apps, honestly, and you know, social media kind of as an umbrella are my biggest vices. So yeah, I mean, what do you have to add there? What are your biggest time wasters?
Oh man, this is all about you, my friend.
Fair enough. Yeah.
I feel you though. I think what you just said, getting up early, I think your most productive time is the morning. So if you're getting up at, you know, 6 a.m. and getting all the stuff out the way, like eating and gymming, and then you get all that excitement, and then now you're sitting and focusing. I think that's so important, because if you don't wake up, you're going to feel like you're running. I don't like the feeling of trying to catch up with time. I like to be ahead of time. like to wake up and I don't want to chase time. I want to be one step at a time. So like, I totally agree with what you said. You basically said like, you would be chasing time if you woke up late, basically, because you know, 8 o'clock comes, you know, you have to finish something, but you're like, my brain is, you know, the sun's down, Netflix is on, you know, screw it. I'm going to watch some Netflix and chill. So, yeah. So like, and another question for you, and obviously, we're having these Skype calls and Zoom calls because it's COVID-19 right now. As you can tell, you're wearing a hat. My hair is growing, and the beard's coming in, and we're letting ourselves go a little bit ungroomed. But during this COVID-19, have you gotten bored? Do you get?
Interesting question. It's interesting because I work remote. Like I can work in my kitchen in my underwear anyway, so nothing's really changed. The biggest change has been like no socialization, which sucks for sure. Bored? No. And I don't know, maybe that's a weird one, but like I've been super motivated. Like, yeah, I can't go out and socialize and meet new people. I live in a new city now, so that would be cool. It's Montreal, it's the summer, it's an amazing place to be, but I've got an extra couple hours a day, so I'm just devoting that to fitness, and I'm reading way more. And I'm figuring out, okay, there's a real good cliche that says, if you can't be happy alone, then it doesn't matter what you do externally, it's not going to make you happy, whether it's relationships or, money or drugs or whatever else, whatever other way you want to fill the void. So it's been a really good time to introspect and, just really realize, make a shift. It's like the glass is shattered. We're picking up the pieces and we're saying, hey, do I need this piece? Do I need this piece? It's been a really good time to reassess and come out stronger. One more important thing to add there too is like starting a company like Site 2020 and seeing it through and being a part of that, again, like it's all in the team. Like it's, it's really, it was a huge team effort. And, that being a startup and just based on some of the things that happened, I haven't been able to, cash out on it yet, we'll say. But it's really weird, man. It's your ego can trick you, whether it's, when I came out of that, I was like, shit, I can't do anything. I had an ego. I was like, I can't do anything smaller than this. It's got to be a big world changing idea, and whatever. And it was really just sucking up the ego and saying, hey, no, I'm going to go, sell goofy ideas door to door. I'm going to, it was because, it's like you can never think you're too good for something, because once you think you're too good for something, you've stopped learning, you've stopped growing. So that's another really big part of it.
Huge, man. That's huge. Honestly, like that is like the biggest pill to swallow, is like when you make it somewhere and then you're like, you got to start from ground zero and make another big thing. It's just like, ground zero, you forget ground zero sometimes. Sometimes you forget it because you're just up. You're on the 10th floor. And you're like, oh, damn, there's a basement level. I totally forgot. I was in the penthouse. Like, what the hell is going on? I got to build another one. And it's like, man, it's gut wrenching and it takes time. But I admire that, when you said it in the beginning, you were like, don't be afraid to be like, one of the traits that you said that entrepreneurs should have is that trait that you just had, is being like, don't be afraid to fuck up and be like, and reevaluate. And then, this is your opportunity now where you're reevaluating it and it's still like, God, that pill to swallow, but man, you're going to kill it. And I know you're going to build another one and another one and another one. And with that being said, Cole, you've helped me personally raise anywhere from $50,000 to $70,000 in just, wealth, just being with ideas and shooting this and and applying for these grants, going here, like easily a brainstorm has turned into a lot of capital for me, if not just real capital of you being like, hey, Nick, here's some advice. Here's who you need to talk to. Here's the grants. Here's the the pitch competitions. You put a lot of that in my head. And a lot of the times I didn't have anybody to tell me that stuff. And if you weren't around, dude, I probably wouldn't be able to scale as quickly as I had. You just say, hey, why wouldn't you do this quick pitch? And it's like, oh, there's $2,500. Or why wouldn't you write this grant? Oh, there's a $20,000. So with that being said, Cole, I think there's going to be a ton of people out there who can need your service. If you can help me, You helped me bring in at least $70,000. I think there should be I'll put a contact email or something on below so people can contact you. Because I think if you can do it for me, you can do it for you, you can do it for other people who are in that middle stage. So yeah, man, tell people where to find you, because this is going to go on my LinkedIn. This is going to go on my Instagram. Just let people know, man, because there's definitely people who can use your services.
Yeah, man. And no, again, that goes both ways. I want to thank you for like involving me with Dart Frog and Anything Matter and all the cool stuff you're doing.
Thank you.
Like just being able to sit in your office with you and Krishna and Brandon and, you know, all the boys and see the really cool thing you built. Like you inspired me because you guys love what you do, you know, like you come into the office every day, you're laughing, you know, you're doing really cool stuff. You're making a really big positive change for a lot of people. So you know, and you do a lot of charitable stuff too. Like I couldn't even begin to describe how much I've learned from you.
Thanks,
Yeah, if people want to find me, I'm at contact Cole Campbell on pretty much every platform. ContactColeCampbell.com, contactcolecampbell@gmail.com. It's pretty, I'm sure, like you said, you'll put in the description here. But yeah, come find me, and I'd love to chat. You know, if you want to hop on the phone, if you want to discuss business, if you want to discuss, you know, whatever it is, really, you know, like I don't really need. It doesn't need to be a specific conversation with a motivation, but if you've got, if you think we can have some value from a conversation or define some, then let's do it. Let's chat.
Yeah, 100%. So with everybody, thank you guys so much for tuning in. I'm hoping to do a little bit more of these. And at the end of the day, guys, it's not about money. It's not about the labels. It's about like just life and how you can be the best you. And hopefully you guys got that takeaway from Cole, him chatting about, you know, how he manages his time, how he tries not to get distracted, how he, you know, wins big and then it's not afraid to go fail again. These are all about like building you. It's like breaking you, building you up, breaking you, building you back up. And I think that's a huge takeaway on how to scale a company from 0 to millions, is you just having that mentality. So Cole, man, I want to thank you so much. And I hope to chat with you soon. I probably call you like every week anyway.
Yeah, no, thanks, dude. Again, thank you very much, Nick. This has been awesome. This has actually been really cool. I had a lot of fun. Yeah, here if you need anything. Appreciate it, dude.
All right, bro. Chat soon.
See ya.
Later.